For those who've been following the podcast, we're very interested in the wellness space and promoting wellness among our entrepreneurs and our community. Sauna Camp is coming up in Minneapolis on March 20th from 2 to 8 p.m. Tickets are now available online, and the whole concept will all be about prioritizing your mental health and your body as business owners. After 2 hours of sauna, we have Fumo, which is amazing Mediterranean-style dishes by Woodfire Grill. Head to curiousbuilder.com under retreats, under Sauna Camp. That is going to be March 20th. The opening night, we just said, let's talk about, off the record, not recorded, what is the hardest thing that you have experienced in your career? There's something really cathartic and really magical when people share a difficult experience, because it really opens people up, and they were really deep and really meaningful. Welcome to Fierce Spirit Podcast. I'm Mark Williams, your host. Today is our Thursday Q&A session, or our mini session. And as if you've been following our social media, you'll know that I was in Chicago for Contractor Coalition Summit over the last 4 or 5 days. Amazing event. So today is going to be kind of a recap for those alumni. I think we're at 350, close to 400 alumni now in our history, which is just amazing. And this was one of, I say this probably every time, it was one of my favorite. This one really was probably the most emotional one that we've ever had. Just the boundaries that were brought down, the walls that were brought down, really from the very beginning. People were so open and just so authentic. And, it's one of the things that I like the most about the podcast is when I get to interview people when they're just real and they're authentic, regardless of where they find themselves. Those are the episodes that I find most interesting, most appealing, and the ones that you connect and learn the most on. So I'll just kind of give, for those that don't know what the Contractor Coalition Summit is, it's basically a 4-day event that we do every 6 months. You've got Brad Levitt from Arizona, you've got Nick Schiffer from Boston with NS Builders, you've got Morgan Molitor here from Minnesota with Construction to Style. You have Tyler Grace from TGR Home Concepts. He and Nick are also co-hosts of The Modern Craftsman, and then myself. So Thursday, flew in late that night, caught up with the guys that night for a late bite. Katie Kath was actually in town, which was pretty cool. She's from Minnesota, past alumni, good friend of ours from Minnesota. She was there with Morgan, as well as to catch up with Allison Case Anderson from Integra Builders. She's based in Chicago, also a former alumni. I met her for the first time in Nashville, actually, which was my first Contractor Coalition. So Friday morning, up early, the whole AFT gang and a few others went to Lifetime. So it was great to spend some time with them in the gym and just harass Brad. I don't get to see him that often. And then we had a 2-hour meeting. So this was actually one of the highlights because, the 5 of us run our own companies. I have the Curious Builder, Mark Williams Custom Homes, Boot Camp, Sauna Camp, all these other things. And the Contractor Coalition is such a huge part of what draws us all together. It's how we all met. It's how we stay really connected. And I think what's happening in the industry is we're just seeing so much of a need for not only financial literacy and business leadership, entrepreneurship, but just really a place to bond where you can get really deep really fast. And the Contractor Coalition is really the perfect place for that, mainly because you get to that 30 to 40 people there. I think this is one of the biggest ones we've had. I think we had 35 builders in attendance and 1 designer. And it was really a magical time. So we spent 2 hours that morning for breakfast just talking about what we want to do with Contractor Coalition Summit. And we probably have 15 to 20 ideas. One of the things that we need to do a better job of is really engaging with our alumni. So we've got all kinds of ideas and plans, how to stay in monthly contact with the alumni, how to provide more resources for the alumni, how to create groups where they can, see coaching and mentorship, not only from us, but even from each other, creating like subgroups. And it'll really be accessed only by alumni. We also want to try to do maybe a standalone event. Tyler Grace has been very passionate about this. And one of the things that I think makes the Contractor Coalition Summit so special and so unique is its size. It's smaller, 30 to 40 people. You really over 4 days get to know each other very, very well. And I think that is magical. I don't think we want to change that. However, there is a significant investment in yourself to come. And it's for sure, it's worth it. I mean, we did an entire episode that'll be released on the Contractor Coalition podcast, where actually Brad Robinson and I went back and forth. And I think we named like 15 or 16 things that to us is worth $10,000 that you learn or have access to by coming. And so it'd be interesting to see what the audience thinks of that. But we want to do a scholarship for one thing. So we'll have people submit a bio, and I think we're going to look at 2 to 4 companies where we would sponsor somebody where the investment is just bigger than they can make. And so we're going to consider a scholarship. We are also going to be looking at a 1-day event. Most likely it'll be in Minneapolis, and it would be a much lower rate. Don't know the details on that just yet, or the dates or any of those things, but it's likely going to happen. And really, it'll be a 1-day event. It'll obviously cannot even come close to the full experience of a 4-day event, but you'll still get a lot of details in that one event. And then really the hope is that people, would come to that one event, realize just how much more there is and how many more levels there are to go. And then in the future, they would obviously come to a future Contractor Coalition Summit where it's the full 4 days. So anyway, lots more to share, or actually that I can't share. So we'll be, if you stay tuned to our social channels, as well as our Instagram and mailing list, you'll obviously be able to kind of get a first look at that. Then really we did house tours. So this has been kind of a hallmark now for the last 4 or 5 coalitions, where the host city will find some local builders that are either a part or past alumni. So in this case, Allison Case Anderson from Integro, an incredible builder. We toured one of her homes, and she did a landmark restoration where that's really what she specializes in. And so she just talked about all the details and going through the city and all these restoration rules and really the complexity. It was actually built, it was in kind of this really cool street, this historic street, and it was built over a pawn shop, and the pawn shop wanted to stay in business. It was one of their flag marks for the whole country. So it's a pretty big, I think it was like Pawn Shop America or something like that. And she talked about how difficult it was to create like basically this tunnel around their entrance while they're redoing the whole facade of this brick building. It was pretty wild. So we got to see that home. And then we went to Willis Towers, which if you haven't looked at it, Google Willis Towers. I think it was in 1970. It was the tallest building in the world for like 40 years. If you think of like cigarettes coming out of a cigarette box, kind of like those little circles and kind of like in different random orders, that's what the architects sort of did to structurally align these different columns. So when you see the tower, it'll totally look like a pack of cigarettes. It's actually pretty cool. But incredible architecture. It had been remodeled several times. And one of the lead architects, I think it was like a $1.7 billion architecture company, it was kind enough to give us a tour along with, I think it was Graco was the name of the GC on it. They do like $9 billion a year in commercial buildings. And so you're just talking about huge projects so far out my understanding, other than obviously a fan of architecture and a fan of construction. But it was just wild to see what they did with the remodel and the thought and the intention, and of course the scale. The scale is wild. It was 4.6 million square feet, which is absolutely just hard to wrap your head around. And the other thing was it had like an 86% vacancy rate or occupied rate, which is one of the highest around. I think the city's average was like 72, which is actually pretty good too. But so it's very well received. It's a historic building. We got to tour it, go up the elevators, see all the construction, see just kind of everything. It was really, really cool. One of the things that I love about the Contractor Coalition is I think people have really responded to these home tours. When they're in Minnesota, for instance, they got to tour one of my homes. When we were in Arizona and Phoenix, we got to tour one of AFT's homes. Boston, we got to tour White Oak. And so anyway, as we move around, the next one will be in Denver. So we'll have a couple homes in Denver. Then the one after that will be in Charlotte. So it's always just kind of fun to see architecture and building. It's been one of the draws for just kind of a non-regulated fun thing to kind of get everyone excited. Then we have the kickoff event. So the kickoff event was kind of like a 6 to 9 food happy hour and kind of a cool little place in the hotel. But what made this one really special is in the past, we've had Marc LaLiberte, who's he owns construction instruction out of Colorado, Brad Levitt built his personal house. It's a net zero house down in Arizona, and he's an incredible speaker. I think he speaks like 150 times a year. He's just, and it's like a entertainment, education, and theater all in one. He's an amazing person to listen to. But he had a conflict, so he's coming in the next day. So we thought, well, let's do something different. And so we had this idea that one of the things that our attendees have always said is just how much they enjoy kind of the deep conversations in between, the sessions. And so what we did is we accelerated that. Mike Weaver came up with this great word I'm not sure he came up with it, but I love it, which is compressed time. So you're only there for 4 days. So how can we compress it and make the most out of it? So the opening night was towards the end of it, the last hour, we just said, Nick and I went first, and just to kind of let people know that, we'd be willing to be vulnerable as well. And they're all strangers. No one knows each other really. And we just said, let's talk about, off the record, not recorded, what is the hardest thing that you have experienced in your career? There's something really cathartic and really magical when people share a difficult experience, because it really opens people up. And it was closed deal, so I won't share all the things that were shared, but they were really deep and really meaningful. Some of them went into mental health. One gentleman talked about getting down to, basically his last, few pennies not pennies, but last few thousand he had in his business a couple of years ago, and invested it in himself, came to Contractor Coalition and turned his career and his life around. And now he said, I came back because I'm doing better than I've ever done, which was, you can only imagine how that make you feel if you're hosting and you hear that story. Like the fact that you were a part of someone's life-changing event, pretty magical. So that really set the tone for the whole weekend. Saturday morning, I usually will do like a half, like Nick and Brad are big going to the gym rats. And so I usually lead an outside run group. So we had 5 or 6 people go for a run. It was great. We ran down by Lake Michigan, ran along the water, which was really great. And then the food, I think the food was maybe one. We always have amazing food, but the breakfast in particular was very good. They had this cool open atrium, that Kipton Gray Hotel. So if you're in Chicago, check it out. It's definitely worth it. Food was amazing. And then really it's from 8 to 12, pretty straight. It's like drinking through a fire hose. While Brad, Morgan, Nick, and Tyler are all doing their teaching, I'm usually outside the room interviewing people. So I did about 6.5 hours straight of interviews. Those interviews will be aired on the Contractor Coalition Summit podcast, as well as the YouTube and the website as well. Those we kind of just, I have a weekly cadence that we air those on. We need to do a better job of talking about them. And it was great. What are people learning? Why did they come? We interview the sponsors, like why do they continue to partner with us? So it's really all the behind the scenes directly from the people that are coming. So I always feel like you can take it from me, which I'm going to give it to you real, but hearing it from their point of view is always really neat as well.
Lake Society magazine is Minneapolis' premier target market boutique lifestyle and design publication. It embodies the unique lifestyles and design of the Minneapolis City Lakes neighborhoods. From Lake of the Isles to Lake Harriet, it showcases the best in local design projects by both premier builders, architects, and interior designers in this area. Lake Society magazine has the look and feel of a national publication with glossy covers, high-end finishes. It's mailed directly to upper bracket single-family homeowners in the City Lakes area, and it's the perfect local coffee tabletop publication. Subscriptions can also be available through the website lakesocietymagazine.com. Additionally, publisher and founder Karen Steckel has over 27 years in the local magazine publishing industry and has a passion for high-end photography and quality graphics. Her commitment to quality, visual simplicity, and beauty are strongly reflected in her beautiful Lake Society magazine.
And then I was able to do my first presentation to Contractor Coalition, which I was really excited about. Something I'm extremely passionate about. It really encapsulates a lot of my own personality, who I am. And the talk that I gave was Boundaries Create Freedom. If you've been listening to the podcast, you've heard this a lot. It's my favorite quote of the last 2 years. And really, it's all about the boundaries that we set in our life with our clients, with ourselves, to protect the things that we want. That's what gives us freedom. And so I had about a half-hour presentation about, different things that will allow you to buy back your time, that will allow you to get freedom to spend time with your family, to have the time you need to recharge so that you can show up and be your best self for your clients, for your business, for your spouse, for your family. And I fail all the time. I was very clear to, talk about how often I fail at it, but how powerful that message is. And it was really humbling for me because I had a bunch of pictures of my kids up there and we were talking about different things that I've done. And, the misogi, again, talked about that on the podcast before, just picking this one thing that your year revolves around. It can be business, personal, whatever you want. But the number of people, I probably had 10, 12 people the next 2 days that came up to me. One gentleman had tears in his eyes and he said, your message really resonated with me. And I need to do a better job of, creating boundaries so I can have, that freedom. Thank you for that. And obviously, again, this is why I think this one was so emotional. It just felt like the connection was so deep. And I can tell you, if you've ever listened to someone or if you've ever spoken in front of a crowd, and I love it. It's not hard for me to get in front of a crowd. I love presenting. I love entertaining. I love, just sharing things that have meant a lot to me. But having people come up to you and say that it connected with them it's a pretty special feeling. And so I guess I would encourage people that if you hear people, not just this podcast, but if you hear a podcast, if you're at a speech, if you're at a seminar, if you listen to anybody and it touched you, go up and talk to them. It'll mean a lot to them, whoever that person is. Send them a note, send them a message. It matters. It helps them keep doing what they're doing. And so I'm just sharing my experience so that, it matters. And then that night we had after another 4 or 5 hours of presentations, we had a 2-hour break where people could do whatever they want. They could relax. We met up for kind of a light dinner. There's so many people that we connect with or that I get to connect with. And so it's like, there's just never enough time. Then we had a beautiful dinner, walked home, and away we go. It was kind of funny because it was raining, and Doug Duvall, the producer for many podcasts, Modern Craftsman, he used to produce mine, Brad Levitt's, The Level Heads, a number of others. And he helps us produce all of the content, behind the mics for Contractor Coalition. He's awesome. But he's like, hey, let's do kind of a man on the street video. So I interviewed Reese Barnes. He's a big fan of the show. He's got a huge beard. He's got Builders, Budgets, and Beer, his podcast. Shout out to him. But he's like this larger than life character. And he's with Adaptive, who's been one of our longtime partners here for the Curious Builder. And anyway, he's got like the microphone like clipped to his beard. And when I say beard, he's got like a ZZ Top beard, except younger looking. And we're walking down the street and it is pouring rain, and we're just getting hammered in the face with like this sleet rain. So I have no idea what that interview is going to sound like or look like, but it'd probably be pretty funny. In fact, at one point Doug was walking backwards filming us, and he's like, you stop if you think I'm going to fall in anything. And we just kept walking. We walked like right across the street while traffic was going. He stopped. He's like, guys. I'm like, well, we would have kept walking. He's like, I would prefer to wait a minute and not get hit. Thank you. So anyway, great evening. Next morning, we did a run in the rain. We lost a few people in the rain. We actually went the wrong way. We got turned around. It was so cloudy. We didn't really check MapQuest at 5:30. We weren't really our best. And so we ran, there was a couple of new people on the group from the day before, and we wanted to show them the lake, but we actually ran the exact opposite way from the lake. So we went back to the hotel, lost everyone. I thought they were going to go with me, but I ran down the lake alone. Didn't matter. It was just great to get out and run again after I've been dealing with some foot injury stuff. So it was just fun to be outside. And then we had another full day of sessions, pre-con agreements. We're talking about client management, client expectations, going through, I think they have an hour and a half contract presentation, all the ins and outs of different types of contracts, but also specifically like real life examples of where things have gone right, where things have gone wrong. Morgan does a whole one about social media that usually just has so much information that people come out and their brain is just melted. And so it's powerful. And then in the afternoon, right after lunch, Nick and I got to give a whole brand presentation. It was about an hour long, a little over, I think, hour and 5 of, I got to speak about Misa Hus, which is our spec home. Misa means cozy in Swedish. The whole entire brand is all around wellness. And so I spoke at depth about like why I created the brand, like the power of having a brand when you build a home and how you can market it differently. And you can go to mysahus.com. That's mysahus.com if you want to check it out. And then Nick talked about 45 White Oak, which is very well known. almost famous really at this point. Random people come up to me and be like, hey, do you know this thing about 45 White Oak? And so Nick talked about all in depth about, his pursuit of excellence. And I think the best way to really encapsulate Nick's passion for 45 White Oak, which I talked about last week on our Thursday. If you missed it, go back a week and you can check out my 25 moments of delight at 45 White Oak. But Bugatti is a real high-end car. And rather than having a budget and then you build a car, Bugatti builds the car and then they tell you what it's going to cost. And that's really the angle that Nick is tackling with 45 White Oak. He and I have a little bit different philosophy in our brands and how we are bringing these spec homes to market, but there's way more in line and way more similar things than there are different. And so it was really fun to be on stage with Nick and kind of go back and forth. And just you could see the audience really soaking in our passion. And, Nick and I, it was like talking about your kids. We're so excited about our perspective, spec homes that it was almost like, when is the other guy going to stop talking so I can talk about my home? And then I'm sure Nick felt the other way. So that was really cool. And then we had dinner that night at Monogram, which was really cool. So they're in Merch Mart and they had a chef and we had a kind of a really cool hour. In fact, I think I heard the most interesting story I've ever heard in my life. I'm trying to bring him on the podcast. We'll see if he agrees. I'll just give you this little teaser. He's from the East Coast and he was indicted for a $2.4 billion lawsuit, third in the history of the United States. Saddam Hussein was number one. I think it was I forget the number two, like Gaddafi or some other international, dictator terrorist. And then this guy, spoiler alert, I'm not going to say his name because I want to wait till the episode comes out. Spoiler alert, he was acquitted of all charges and he became a builder during the process. I think the whole episode that we'll have with him on is all about mental resilience, mental toughness, doing hard things, mental health. But I'm a passionate person. I love storytelling. I was so engrossed with this story. It took him 2.5 hours. We were interrupted several times between dinner, presentations, the bus. But I can't remember the last time I sat that riveted. I just could not stop listening to the story. So regardless of who you are or why you listen to this show, I'm telling you, this story will grab you and bring you in. It's magnetic. So I really hope to have that before Christmas if I can. And then Monday morning. So it was really cool. So it started to snow. We had a winter weather advisory, kind of a little mini blizzard for Minnesotans. It wasn't that big of a deal. It was like 2 inches. Everyone was like freaking out. I'm like, this is just a random day that ends in Y, but okay. But they were canceling flights, rescheduling flights. I've got 3 kids at home. I'm like, oh man, my wife isn't that excited about me being gone 4 or 5 days anyway. If I miss another day, I'm like, oh man. So I called my dad. He's 75. And he says, man, I'll just drive there from Minneapolis. So my flight had got rescheduled from 1 o'clock to 9 o'clock, but I didn't know if it was going to get canceled again. And so anyway, he drove down, very kind of him, 6.5 hours from Minneapolis to Chicago, crashed in my hotel room. So that morning, it was really fun. I got to bring my dad to the last day of Contractor Coalition. He was a hit. I think they liked him more than me, which is just fine by me. He's pretty awesome. And I'll talk a little bit more about that later, just having him in the office. So it was raining or snowing pretty good actually at this point. So last day I went with Brad to the gym, which is the 2 of us. We had a couple of late arrivals and had a great time, came back, had breakfast, and then it was fun. So, I got to have breakfast with my dad. He got to meet these other builders. He got to meet that cool guy from Connecticut that I was alluding to, along with Greg Lasker. So Greg and I met, I call him OG because he's from, where's Greg from? Down in the Southeast. I'm blanking right now. Not Nashville, Tennessee. I met him at Nashville. Anyway, he is just this warm, he's like warm butter on warm toast. He's just this really inviting, warm personality. And him and my dad hit it off right away. And so anyway, we had a good time that morning. Morgan gave a talk on AI. And it was, every time she gives her talk on AI, usually Nick is there too. Nick had to leave early to get back, so he wasn't there. But the two of them are so far ahead of everyone else on AI. It's super impressive and inspiring. And I think what we're going to do, one of the tactical changes that we'll make is when we go to Denver in April, which is our next Contractor Coalition Summit, we're going to put AI on day 1, lesson 1, because a lot of the things that Morgan was teaching us and has taught us in the past, or ones that have been listening, is even how we take notes and listen, but it goes way beyond that. And so we thought it'd be really fun to put AI higher up in the teaching segment versus the end, mainly so that people that are interested could download whatever program and use what she's telling them through the whole conference. So almost like you get to do it and practice it all in that one weekend. So I'm really excited for that. And then we did an hour and a half, I think it ended up being like an hour and 10-minute Q&A. So in the past, we've just had people raise their hands and just ask any question they want, which is just fine. But this year, we had a QR code at the end of every session, and people could write in their questions, over the 3 days. So for this last one, they were all just tabulated on an app that came to our phone, and we would just read the questions, have a discussion between the four of us. And people often find the Q&A the most helpful. I know when I went to my first Contractor Coalition Summit in Nashville, that the Q&A is really, that's why I went. I personally have not done great of just, listening while someone just talks the whole time. I like to interact. And so I know other people do too. And so then it wrapped it up. We got to say goodbye, met some amazing people over the four days that we were there. And then Dad and I got to drive home. So it was really special. We got to spend 6 hours in the car, just talking life and just talking about everything. And so, I'm 45, Dad's 75. So I don't know how many of those trips we're going to have quite like that. And we've done a lot of road trips in our life. And I was commenting to Dad, just, all the stories we got to talk about and kids and everything. And so it was really just a special 4 or 5 days. So that's really it. Oh, one thing I wanted to read, I just got this text about an hour ago. I'm not going to say his name, but this is why being a part of Contractor Coalition is so meaningful to the 5 of us that help lead it. Mark, my head is still spinning from this past weekend, from all the information that's going to completely transform my business, but also the personal connection that we have. I used ChatGPT intentionally for the business today to write a very hard email in response to a clear boundary that was trying to be crossed and set expectations for our SOPs. That email would have taken me 2 or 3 or 4 days to write and would have emotionally wrecked me for those days. It took me 12 minutes. I feel professional and not emotional. Maybe one of the most productive Mondays I've had in my life. Thanks again to you and everyone else for all your openness and transparency. That's powerful. We're super, super cool. We do get texts and emails from the attendees. Obviously, the ones in person, there's more than I could remember, but it's the way they make you feel. And it's a wonderful thing. So if you're interested, our next one is in April. That registration and date release will be announced here shortly. And if you're an alumni, I just want to say thank you. You're one of us. We see you. We appreciate you. And we're happy to collaborate and not, just to be together. It's an amazing thing. So thank you for tuning in, and we'll see you next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Curious Builder podcast. If you like this episode, do us a favor, share it with 3 other business owners. The best way that we can spread what we're doing is by word of mouth, and with your help, we can continue to help other curious builders expand their business. Please share it with your friends, like and review online, and thanks again for tuning in.